Nyalata from Daintree. This is the oldest rainforest in the world. 180 million years old. Judging by the assemblage of flora and fauna that exists in all the current places which once were Gondwana land. It's very old. And if you look up, see how many layers, how much diversity and structural complexity there is to this ecosystem. So much so, if you look up there at the canopy, there's actually basically another forest. There's soil up in the canopy that a number of animals use, and plants growing on trees growing on trees. So actually it's a very important area of research right now, canopy soil. You can see fan palms all over here, Australian fan palms. It is a rainforest, and in this rainforest it floods, especially in rainy season. And being able to withstand those conditions and be adapted to waterlogged, oxygen poor soil is a specialty of those fan palms. They also are able to capture a lot of light in photosynthesis as they have those huge leaves. You can see how important epiphytes are here. Huge communities of those ferns that are growing right there on top of these other trees. And you can see how they could capture water and add moisture and soil to this environment up above the bottom of the forest, where it's nutrient poor soil to begin with. But having no nutrients up there it's now not no nutrients now. There are nutrients up there. There's also a lot of light up there, up towards the canopy. Some of the trees and things that will start growing in there will actually be parasitic, sometimes like strangler figs, but also tie into the tree hosts themselves and kill them if they're that, or just send their roots down and eventually reach the forest floor and maybe take over that way as well, or maybe not. This is a good up-close look at one of those basket ferns. See, the green fronds are really more for reproduction, and they do have these brown fronds that actually protect the root system as well. You can actually see moss growing in there as well, and that's why this becomes a little microhabitat that's available for lots of different organisms. This is called the Zamia fern. However, it's a cycad. It's even an older, let's call it more, not more primitive, but older plant type. So there are male and female cones. There's no flowers. And they actually rely on weevils to pollinate the female cones. Once the weevils are covered in pollen, they're enticed to the female cones by odor. Obviously, there's got to be a reason to go there, and that's what happens. That's how they attract them. So it's the weevils only live in the male cones, but then they go to the female cones, and this is how they propagate. This tree is heavily dependent on the local southern cassowary. So there's a 92% chance of germination if its seeds, and this is Riporosa carangi, pass through the guts of a cassowary. There are many cassowaries in this location. Hopefully we see one. I know I pointed these out before in other videos, but again, we are in a very flood prone area. with some trees that grow quite tall and need some stabilization. So they do have buttresses that really expand into the soil and do hold them tight in even flooded conditions. The Bougie Boardwalk in Colkey, Cape Tribulation, as it's now named by some people. And it is a site where two World Heritage Sites come together. One being the Great Barrier Reef, and one being this rainforest. Canopy's dominated by fan palms in this spot. Again, a lot of that traditional land for fan palms has been cleared, sadly. This environment is aquatic and terrestrial. So nutrients are going to wash into the sea. It's going to provide nutrients for the Great Barrier Reef. But the plants here have to be adapted to different levels of salinity. And there are different kinds of mangroves, some of which are better adapted to water that's less salty, lesser degree of salinity, and some that are adapted well to being in the saline waters. Here's where the rainforest meets the reef. You can actually see the reef. It appears possibly. It is not far out there. Being in the tropics, having that constancy in the amount of sunlight, the sun is a precious resource. It's why you have epiphytes that grow down and vines that grow up, trying to exploit as much of that sunlight as possible. It's a very productive area. It's a big struggle, however. And when there's more resources, there's also more herbivory and predation. This land is well taken care of at this point, developed for tourism, but also with the mindfulness that the Yulanji people have been here the longest, and if anyone has rights to the land, it is them and not anybody else. They are involved in the day-to-day operation, and people pay respects as they should. We are in the tropical rainforest, but even here there's differences in the amount of water, and water is important. Even for reproduction, this king fern, and a plant that has not changed for millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, needs it to have its spores transported by the water or the wind in order to reproduce effectively and disperse. It may seem obvious one way to get sunlight is to outcompete your competitors, which they try to, some of them, and emergent trees do this. They grow really tall, but there are some drawbacks. Some advantages to emerging from the canopy are that you get that sunlight. You could also attract some pollinators better, maybe, like bats if they want. But you have to be able to support that structure and tolerate the extreme conditions of sunlight and wind that the rest of the canopy and subcanopy do not have to deal with. This is a mesophyll vine forest. Mesophyll means that the average leaf size in the canopy is greater than 12.5 centimeters. If you go up the mountains, however, it does get a little bit less. If you've ever noticed, there are a lot of pointy leaves in the tropics. One reason for that is to allow the moisture of water to run off so they don't get moldy and diseased, and also because photosynthesis is more efficient when leaves are dry. If you're looking up, realize the difference from what you'll see at the canopy at this tower. The light, how many levels of plants there are, and the structural complexity, the competition that exists. There's an advantage to being up there, even as an animal, if you can get away from predators on the ground, if you could fly. The canopy could be a good place to get some fruit. Oftentimes there are fruit and flowers with nectar up there, useful for a resource. That brown blob next to the pole is him. He's itching. There he is. It's important to remember that for as long as people have been in these forests, the Yulanji people have been here for quite some time. They managed it with fire, used the environment to their advantage, and did so sustainably. What you're looking at is basically like the skeleton of the old tree that had been strangled by the strangler fig. This is a 500-year-old strangler fig. On the inside, it's going to be hollow by now. It grew its roots around its host tree, and now is completely taken over. What had happened was, you had a seed dispersed high in the canopy by a bird or a bat. It started to grow right on there, and then as the roots came down, eventually they anchored into the soil and now can sustain the fig on its own, and the host tree no longer has a chance to exist. This is Hope's cycad, and it really hasn't changed much in 230 years. It does have a seed that is eaten by cassowaries and musky rat-kangaroos and a bunch of other things. One thing you'll note about in these wet tropics is So you have a number of trees that are coniferous, meaning that they have their leaves or fruit or flowers just come straight out of the trunk instead of just on branches like that. And one reason when it comes to the flowers and the fruit is that it does attract different pollinators, and gives them an advantage with those particular pollinators. You need a competitive advantage here because there are so many options, and if you can better lure certain pollinators or seed dispersers to you, that would give you an advantage over some of the other plants that are here.